The encounter. Alex had never seen a world so empty. As he stood at the edge of the ruined city, the wind howled through broken buildings, scattering dust and debris across the barren streets. The once thriving city of Elithia was now just a ghost town, its beauty and life lost to war. His mission was simple: find any survivors, if there were any left. But deep down, he knew it was unlikely. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and this planet had been through hell. Alex was a soldier, a part of the Earth Federation's elite reconnaissance unit. He was used to dangerous missions, but something about Elithia felt different. The silence here was eerie. It was as if the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder, making sure his rifle was secure, and started walking. His boots crunched against the broken pavement as he moved cautiously through the deserted streets. He checked his tracker. It showed no signs of life. No readings. Nothing. But as he neared the center of the city, he heard something. A faint noise. It sounded like a voice. His heart raced. It was faint, almost drowned out by the wind, but it was there. A cry for help. Without thinking, he rushed forward, following the sound. His footsteps echoed in the empty streets as he turned a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. Lying in the ruins of a collapsed building was a girl. She was small, her body wrapped in tattered clothing, and her face was pale and covered in dirt. But what made Alex freeze wasn't her appearance. It was her eyes. They were glowing faintly, a soft blue that seemed to pulse with an inner light. She was an alien, and not just any alien. She was the last of a species known to the galaxy as the Xanth. Her kind had been nearly wiped out by a ruthless empire, their world destroyed in a brutal invasion. The stories told of their beauty, intelligence, and advanced technology. But now, there was nothing left, or so Alex had thought. "Please," the girl whispered, her voice weak. "Help me." Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure. He'd seen countless alien species during his time as a soldier, but never one like this. The Xanthi were known to be powerful and enigmatic, and their enemies feared them. This girl, though, looked like nothing more than a victim. Without thinking, he crouched beside her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice filled with concern. The girl's eyes flickered with something. Hope, maybe. She weakly reached out, grabbing Alex's wrist with surprising strength. You're human?" she asked, her voice hoarse but urgent. "Yeah, I am. What happened to you?" Alex said, trying to make sense of the situation. The girl looked like she was barely holding on, and her injuries were severe. She was covered in cuts and bruises, and it was clear she had been through a lot. "My name is Lyra," she said between labored breaths. "I am the last of the Xanth. The Empire, they destroyed my people. I've been hiding for so long. Please, you have to help me." Alex's mind raced. The Xanthi. The same species that had been wiped out years ago in one of the most brutal conflicts the galaxy had ever known. If she was truly the last one, that meant her people were gone, erased from existence. "Why should I help you?" Alex asked, his voice filled with doubt. He wasn't sure if he could trust her. In his line of work, trust was a rare commodity, but something in her eyes made him hesitate. "I am not just the last of my people," Lyra whispered, her voice growing weaker. "I hold the key to saving my species. The last hope for the Xanth lies with me." Alex furrowed his brow. "What are you talking about? How could you save your species if you're the last one?" Lyra took a deep breath, her face twisted with pain. "I carry the last of our technology, the weapon we created to fight back, but I can't activate it alone. I need you. You, a human, are the only one who can help." Alex didn't understand. He had no idea what she was talking about. But one thing was clear. Lyra was in danger, and there were forces out there that would stop at nothing to capture her. Just then, a loud noise broke through the silence. The sound of engines, A ship, large and powerful, descended from the sky, casting a shadow over the city. It was an enemy ship. Alex didn't need to see the markings to know who it belonged to. The galactic empire that had wiped out the Xanth. Lyra's eyes widened in fear. They found me. Alex grabbed her, pulling her into his arms. We need to move. Now. He didn't hesitate. He didn't know how, but something inside him told him that he couldn't leave her behind. This girl, this alien, was the last of her kind, and if there was even a chance to save her species, he had to try. As they hurried through the ruined city, the sound of the enemy ship grew louder. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He had no plan, no backup. All he had was Lyra, and the desperate need to keep her safe. They ran into the alleyways, ducking behind the remnants of broken buildings, but Alex knew they wouldn't have long. The Empire was relentless, and if they caught Lyra, it would be the end of the Xanth. Please, Lyra whispered, her voice filled with urgency. You have to save my people. Alex glanced at her, her glowing eyes full of hope. He didn't know how he could do it, but in that moment, he realized one thing. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for something greater, the future of an entire species, and he wouldn't stop until he saw it through. The fight for the Xanth had just begun, the last of her kind. Alex kept moving, his mind racing as he helped Lyra stumble through the ruins of the city. She was weaker than she'd let on, barely able to walk on her own. Every step seemed like an effort. Her breathing was shallow, and her hands trembled as she clutched his arm for support. The enemy ship was getting closer, its massive shape casting a long shadow over the land. It had descended from the sky so quickly that Alex barely had time to react. Now, the only thing he could do was keep moving, keep them one step ahead. But Lyra wasn't just any alien. She was the last of a species that had been wiped out by the very empire that was now hunting her. The Xanth. Alex had heard of them. Of course. Who hadn't? They were a name spoken in whispers, a mysterious race of alien beings who had once ruled entire star systems. They were known for their beauty, their advanced technology, and their fierce intelligence. But all of that had ended when the Empire, in its insatiable hunger for power, had destroyed them. Their worlds had been burned, their cities razed, their people slaughtered. Now, Lyra was all that remained. I didn't think anyone was left, Alex said, his voice quiet, as if speaking any louder would break the fragile moment they were sharing. He helped her sit against the wall of a destroyed building. The city was dead silent, except for the occasional distant rumble of the enemy ship's engines. Lyra's eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, flickered toward him. I didn't think so either, she whispered. I thought I was the last. I've been running for years, hiding in the shadows. Every time I thought I was safe, they found me again. But now, I'm out of time. Alex watched her closely. There was a quiet sadness in her words, a deep pain that ran beneath the surface. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? His whole life, he'd been trained for combat, for missions like this, search and rescue, infiltration, even assassination. But nothing had prepared him for this. Why didn't you fight back? He asked, not meaning to sound harsh but struggling to understand. The Xanthi were powerful, legendary, even. Surely they had some kind of weapon, some technology to protect themselves. Why had they fallen so easily to the Empire? Lyra's gaze hardened for a moment, and she pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. We did fight back, she said, her voice soft but fierce. But the Empire was too strong. They had ships that could wipe out entire planets, weapons that could burn worlds to the ground. We tried, but we were outmatched. In the end, they didn't just destroy our cities. They destroyed our hope. Alex could feel the weight of her words. The galaxy was a brutal place, but to hear her speak so plainly about the destruction of an entire species, it hit him harder than he expected. The last of the Xanthi is supposed to be a legend. Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. The survivors, the ones who fled, they're all gone. Lyra nodded slowly. I was one of the last to leave. I've been hiding ever since. But she paused, as if weighing her words carefully. There's something you don't know, something I need to tell you. The Xanthi were more than just a race of advanced beings. We had something powerful, a weapon that could have turned the tide of the war. Alex frowned. A weapon? What kind of weapon? Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something else in them. Something ancient, something powerful. It's called the Heart of Xanthi, a device built by our greatest scientists. It has the power to control energy on a planetary scale. If activated, it can wipe out fleets, destroy armies, and it can also save our people. Alex's heart skipped a beat. A weapon of that magnitude. It sounded like something out of a story, not real life. But looking into Lyra's eyes, he knew she wasn't lying. There was a truth in her words, something undeniable. But why didn't you use it before? He asked. If it's so powerful, why didn't you stop them? Lyra's face darkened. The Heart of Xanthi isn't just a weapon. It's also a curse. Only a Xanth can activate it, but the process takes a toll. It drains our energy, our life force. The more we use it, the closer we come to death. I was supposed to be the last one to wield it, but I've been running, hiding. I didn't want to die. Not like this. Alex was silent for a long moment. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. He couldn't imagine what it must have been like for her, to carry the hopes of an entire species, knowing that using the heart could be the end for her. How does it work? Alex asked finally. Is it something you can activate now? Lyra shook her head, her voice shaking. I can't. Not without your help. My help, Alex repeated, confused. I don't know why, but the Heart of Xanthi only responds to human energy. Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. I've studied the old texts. I've tried to activate it myself, but it needs a human. You're the only one who can help me. Alex stared at her, still trying to process everything. It didn't make sense, but the look in Lyra's eyes, there was something in her desperation that he couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a cry for survival. This was a plea for something bigger, for the chance to save a species, to stop the Empire from destroying everything. Where is it? Alex asked, his voice steady now. Where do we find the heart? Lyra's eyes softened. It's hidden, deep within the ruins of our capital. But the Empire knows about it too. They've been searching for it for years. And now, they found me. Alex didn't need to ask again. The urgency in Lyra's voice told him everything he needed to know. They were running out of time. We need to get to it first, he said, determination setting in. We can't let them have it. Not after everything they've done. Lyra nodded, her face pale but resolute. Then we must hurry. The fate of my people depends on it. And with that, the two of them set off again, deeper into the ruins, toward the Heart of Xanthi, and toward the fight that could change the galaxy forever. The hidden path. The ruins of Elithia stretched before Alex like a labyrinth of broken glass and crumbling stone. The city had once been magnificent, towers that scraped the sky, streets that hummed with life, technology far beyond anything Earth had developed. But all of it was gone now, erased by the wrath of the Empire. The very ground they walked on seemed to whisper of what had been lost. Lyra, despite her obvious exhaustion, moved with purpose. She had been here before, and her knowledge of the city's secrets was what kept them one step ahead of the Empire's forces. Alex couldn't help but notice the way she moved, so gracefully yet with a quiet urgency, as though she carried the weight of an entire civilization's survival on her shoulders. The fact that she had the last piece of their salvation made the mission feel even heavier. They kept to the shadows, ducking behind half-collapsed buildings and piles of rubble. Lyra's glowing blue eyes pierced the darkness, scanning the path ahead, while Alex kept watch over their rear. Every so often, he would hear the hum of enemy scouts in the distance, their presence like a dark cloud looming over them. The Empire was relentless, but Alex was used to being hunted. He'd survived worse. But this felt different. This was bigger than a fight for his life. This was about saving the species from extinction. Lyra stopped suddenly, her body tensing. Alex froze beside her, instinctively reaching for his rifle. They stood still for what seemed like an eternity, listening. The distant sound of engines hummed through the air, growing louder. It wasn't a ship. It was something closer, something much smaller. "How far are they?" Alex whispered, his voice barely audible. The sound of approaching footsteps made his grip tighten on his weapon. "They're coming from the west," Lyra whispered back, her voice strained. "But I know a shortcut. We can avoid them if we move quickly." She turned to face him, and for the first time, Alex saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, not for herself, but for what was at stake. She wasn't just running from the Empire. She was running toward something far more dangerous, the heart of Xanth. Alex nodded, keeping his voice steady. "Lead the way. We need to move now." They slipped into an alleyway between two collapsed buildings, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust and debris. Lyra moved with confidence, but Alex could tell her energy was waning. Every few steps, she would stagger slightly, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The weight of the task they had ahead was becoming more than just a physical burden for her. It was a mental one, too. The more she spoke of the heart, the more it became clear that it wasn't just a weapon. It was the last hope for her species, but also a symbol of everything they had lost. "You said the heart needs a human to activate it," Alex said as they hurried through the alley, trying to break the silence that had settled between them. "But why me? Why not someone else? You said you had been studying the ancient texts. Did they say anything about why it has to be me?" Lyra didn't answer right away. She led them into a narrow tunnel hidden beneath the rubble, a passage that wound its way deep beneath the city. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the walls were covered with ancient Xanth carvings, intricate symbols that Alex couldn't begin to understand. "Human energy," Lyra said at last, her voice soft but filled with the weight of her words. "It's not just a coincidence. My people discovered something long ago. An energy that flows through all living things, a force stronger than anything we can comprehend. The heart of Xanthi was designed to draw upon that energy, but only a human can channel it. Only you can activate its full potential." Alex's mind was spinning. This wasn't just a weapon then. It was a power, an ancient force that could change the course of history. He could feel the weight of the task growing heavier with every step they took. The tunnel was dark, the only light coming from Lyra's faintly glowing eyes. The walls of the passageway were lined with markings, symbols that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. Every now and then, the flicker of a strange light would dance across the carvings, as if the tunnel itself was alive, waiting for something. Alex paused for a moment, his hand brushing against the wall. The texture of the stone was unlike anything he had ever felt. It was smooth, almost too smooth, as though it had been polished by centuries of hands. But there was something more to it, something in the way the markings seemed to shimmer when he touched them. Lyra didn't stop. She continued walking, her pace quickening. "We're close," she said, glancing over her shoulder at Alex. "But we must hurry. The Empire is already closing in." They rounded a corner and came to a set of heavy ancient doors. The doors were covered in the same glowing symbols Alex had seen along the walls of the tunnel, only these were far more intricate. There was a sense of power in them, a pulse of ancient energy that seemed to radiate from the very structure. "This is it," Lyra said, stopping in front of the doors. She placed her hand on the center of the door, and Alex could feel a shift in the air, a hum that vibrated deep in his chest. Slowly, the massive doors began to creak open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. Inside, The room was vast. The walls were covered in more of the strange carvings, but in the center of the room was a pedestal, and on the pedestal, surrounded by a faint blue glow, was the heart of Xanthi. It was more magnificent than Alex could have imagined. The heart was a crystalline structure, delicate yet powerful, pulsing with an energy that seemed to resonate with the very air around it. It was both beautiful and terrifying. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. "This is it, the last hope of my people." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine as he approached the pedestal. The energy in the room was overwhelming, almost suffocating. His body reacted instinctively, his heart beating faster as he drew closer to the heart. But just as his hand reached out toward the crystalline structure, a voice shattered the silence. "Stop!" Alex spun around, his weapon raised instinctively, but he saw no one. The voice had come from nowhere, yet it seemed to echo in every corner of the room. "Leave now, or face the consequences." The voice was cold, unfeeling, like the wind itself had spoken. But Alex knew one thing for certain. They weren't alone anymore. The Empire had found them. The price of salvation. The voice echoed through the chamber, vibrating the very air around them. Alex's hand tightened on his weapon, but he didn't fire. He knew better than to shoot into the unknown. The sense of danger in the room was palpable, like the calm before a storm. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, any hint of where the voice had come from. Lyra stood frozen beside him, her pale skin glowing faintly in the dim light, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. "They found us," she whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. "The Empire's soldiers are close." The moment the words left her mouth, the chamber doors slammed shut behind them, sealing off their only escape. Alex's heart raced as he spun around, assessing the situation. There was no way out. The only thing left was the heart of Xanth, and the looming question of whether they would ever leave this place alive. The strange voice spoke again, but this time it was clearer. "You should not be here, human. You and your companion have violated ancient laws." A figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was tall, cloaked in a flowing black robe that shimmered with an eerie, otherworldly light. Its face was hidden behind a mask, but its eyes, red and glowing, pierced through the darkness like twin orbs of fire. The figure's presence was oppressive, a suffocating weight pressing down on Alex's chest. Lyra's hand shot out to grab Alex's arm, pulling him back slightly. "Do not engage with them," she whispered urgently. "They are the Sentinels, the keepers of the heart. They guard it with their lives." Alex's mind raced. Sentinels. He had heard of them, whispered about in stories. Guardians who were as much a part of the heart as the energy it contained. They were ancient, almost mythical, and they were sworn to protect the heart from anyone who might try to use it for their own gain. The Sentinel spoke again, its voice cold and calculating. "You are the last of your kind, Xanth. You have come to claim the heart, but you have forgotten the price. No being may touch the heart without facing the consequences." Lyra's face paled further, and she took a cautious step forward. "I know the price, but I have no choice. My people are gone. The heart is all that remains of us. If I do not activate it, we will be forgotten forever. My people will be lost to time." The Sentinel remained silent for a long moment, as if considering her words. Then it tilted its head slightly. The heart was never meant to be a weapon. It was created to preserve balance, but you seek to use it as a tool of destruction. This will be your undoing. Alex's pulse quickened. The tension in the room was unbearable. The Sentinel's presence seemed to distort reality itself, the air thick with a strange energy. He glanced at Lyra, whose eyes were locked on the Sentinel. There was fear in her gaze, but also something else, something resolute. "I am not asking for destruction," Lyra said, her voice shaking but firm. "I only want to save what's left of my people. The Empire is relentless. It will wipe us out completely if we do nothing. This is the only way." The Sentinel took a slow step forward, its figure becoming even more imposing as it neared. To awaken the heart is to challenge fate itself. It is not a tool for survival. It is a force of nature, beyond comprehension. If you activate it, it will either save your species or destroy you entirely. Alex could feel the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just about the heart. It was about the future of an entire species. Lyra wasn't just some refugee, hiding from the Empire. She was the last living Xanth, the last hope of her people. If she failed here, it would mean their extinction. If she succeeded, it could either save them or bring about their ultimate downfall. Lyra's voice was steady now, a fierce determination burning in her eyes. I know the risks. I've seen them in the ancient texts. But I cannot allow my people to vanish. I won't let them die in vain. The sentinel's eyes narrowed, and for a moment it seemed to hesitate. Then it stepped back, raising a hand toward the heart of Xanth. The blue glow of the heart pulsed stronger, and the room seemed to hum with an ancient energy, like the heartbeat of a dying world. You seek to use the heart as a last resort, the sentinel said, its voice now tinged with an unspoken sorrow. But know this, the heart's power will exact a toll. It does not come freely. Whoever activates it will pay a price. The greater the use, the greater the sacrifice. Alex's stomach twisted. A price. What kind of price? The heart was supposed to be the salvation of an entire species. Was it really worth it? Lyra, her face pale but resolute, turned to Alex. There was an unspoken understanding between them. She had known this moment would come. She had known there would be a cost. I'm willing to pay it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I have to. Before Alex could respond, the sentinel spoke once more, its voice like the grinding of stone. Very well. But know this, Xanth, you will not be the only one to pay. Your companion will too. Alex's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? The sentinel's glowing eyes flickered, and for the first time, Alex saw something akin to pity in its gaze. The heart does not distinguish between those who use its power. If you aid her in awakening it, the price will fall on you as well. Alex felt his breath catch in his throat. He wasn't just helping Lyra now. He was choosing to sacrifice himself as well. No, Alex said, his voice breaking through the tension in the room. I'm not. But Lyra stepped forward, her hand gently resting on his arm. You knew what you were getting into, Alex. You've known from the beginning. This isn't just my fight anymore. It's ours. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with the weight of their choices. The sentinel, seeing no further resistance, stepped aside. The heart awaits. But remember, once it is awakened, there is no turning back. Lyra turned to the pedestal, her eyes locked on the crystal. I'm ready, she said, her voice calm now, her fear replaced by a quiet determination. Alex's mind was spinning. He had no idea what this would mean for him, what kind of toll the heart would take. But looking at Lyra, the last hope of a lost people, he knew he couldn't turn back. The fate of her species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, was now in their hands. He stepped forward, his hand reaching out toward the heart. As his fingers brushed against its surface, a surge of energy shot through him, so powerful that it made him gasp in pain. It was as though his very soul was being pulled into the heart itself. The chamber shook, and the blue light from the heart flared brighter, almost blinding. And then, in the silence that followed, the price was paid. Alex could only hope it had been worth it. The toll of power. The air in the chamber crackled with the intensity of the energy that surged from the heart of Xanth. Alex's hand still rested on its smooth surface, the vibrations coursing through his entire body like 1,000 volts of lightning. His breath came in sharp gasps, the pain like nothing he had ever experienced before. It was as though every cell in his body was being pulled apart and remade at once, the raw power of the heart overwhelming his senses. He wanted to pull his hand away, to stop, but something inside him told him it was too late. The process had already begun. Lyra was beside him, Her eyes closed as she felt the energy as well, but there was a calmness to her expression. She was not in pain the way Alex was. Instead, there was a quiet strength in her, an acceptance of what was happening. The heart was awakening, and there was no turning back. Alex's mind spun with thoughts of the consequences, the price the Sentinel had warned them about. The heart did not grant power without taking something in return. He could feel it, could sense it deep in his bones. Whatever sacrifice was required, it was not something they could escape. The light from the heart grew brighter, filling the chamber until it was almost blinding. The blue energy swirled around them like a living thing, coiling and writhing, reaching out, connecting, linking their very souls with the heart's ancient power. Alex tried to focus, but his vision blurred, and the pain intensified. His muscles tensed involuntarily as though they were being stretched to their limits, his body protesting against the force. Alex. Lyra's voice was a distant echo in the roar of energy. She reached for him, but her hand faltered just before it could touch his arm. Her face, pale and strained, was full of concern. She could feel it too. The heart's power was overwhelming even her. Alex could barely hear her over the deafening hum of the heart, but through the haze of pain, a realization hit him like a jolt of electricity. This wasn't just about Lyra's species. The heart wasn't merely an artifact of power or salvation. It was alive, connected to something far greater, a force that could reshape the galaxy itself. And now, they had awakened it. They had unleashed its potential. But for what price? The glowing energy began to pulse, and in that moment, Alex felt it. His heart, no, his very soul was being dragged into the heart's core. It wasn't a physical force, but something far more terrifying. The heart wasn't just taking from him, it was reshaping him. His past, his memories, everything that made him who he was, started to blur and fade, slipping through his fingers like sand. Lyra gasped. She too had felt it. The heart was not just affecting them physically, it was altering their very beings. No. Alex's voice cracked as he tried to pull his hand back. His body trembled with the strain of holding on, but it was as if the heart had a grip on him that he could not escape. The room spun, and he felt his consciousness begin to fracture, slipping into something darker, something less human. Alex, no, you have to hold on, Lyra said, her voice trembling with fear. She was struggling now, her body stiffening as the power from the heart threatened to overtake her as well. But she knew something he didn't. She had always known the price. Lyra had been preparing for this moment her entire life, but she had never expected the cost would be so high. She could feel her own identity stretching, fraying, as though her very essence was being torn from her. Her memories, her people, everything she had fought to save. It was all becoming a distant blur, as if it were slipping through her fingers like the last threads of a broken rope. Her gaze locked with Alex's, and in that moment, she realized that they were both facing the same fate. The heart was not just a tool. It was a test. It had the power to save, but only if they were willing to lose everything that defined them. Alex, she whispered again, but this time, her voice was full of a deep, painful resignation. The heart, it takes more than just our bodies. It's taking our memories, our futures. It's making us part of itself. His mind spun as the thought struck him. The heart had not just granted them power, it was trying to make them one with it, to erase who they were and make them something else, something beyond humanity, beyond Xanthi. Is this what you wanted? Alex's voice was strained, his throat dry from the pressure, from the overwhelming force. He could feel his thoughts becoming disjointed, like his mind was being drowned in an ocean of raw power. Lyra's lips trembled. She knew what the heart could do. She had read the texts, studied the ancient lore. The heart didn't just save or destroy, it consumed. And now it was trying to consume them both. No, she whispered, though her eyes betrayed the conflict. I didn't know it would be like this. I thought it would save us. Alex could see the doubt in her eyes, and it hit him harder than any physical blow. She had believed the heart could restore her people. She had believed it could heal them. But now, as they both stood on the precipice of losing themselves entirely, the truth was undeniable. The heart was no savior. It was a force of nature, indifferent to the needs of those who sought to control it. "I can't," Alex began, his voice breaking. "I can't lose myself. I can't let it take me." But it was too late. The energy from the heart surged again, and he felt himself slipping. His body felt like it was being pulled apart, and yet, at the same time, something was pulling him back toward the heart. It was too powerful, too insistent. Lyra looked at him, her face filled with a mixture of sorrow and understanding. I don't know how to stop it, Alex. The heart does not obey. It takes what it needs." With a final surge of power, the blue light from the heart engulfed them both. The pain, the loss, everything became a blur. The chamber around them disappeared, and they were left floating in the depths of the heart itself. Everything that was Alex and Lyra, everything that had made them human, made them Xanth, began to fade away. For a brief moment, Alex caught a glimpse of what they had been. Two people, fighting for survival in a galaxy that cared little for their existence. They had fought against insurmountable odds, had struggled to keep hope alive in the face of overwhelming darkness. And now, that struggle seemed destined to be forgotten. But even as the heart tried to take them, Alex held on to one final thought. They might lose everything, but they would never lose each other. The shattered truth. The world had stopped. At least it felt that way to Alex. The violent, searing energy that had flooded his senses was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. For a moment, there was no pain, no struggle. He could no longer feel the grip of the heart, nor could he sense Lyra's presence. It was as though they had been transported to a place that existed beyond time and space, somewhere that had no rules, no boundaries. It was dark. Alex's eyes fluttered open, but all he could see was a swirling void, a sea of stars, distant and cold. He tried to move, to call out, but his body was unresponsive. His limbs felt like they had been frozen in place, locked within an invisible cage. He was trapped, caught in a limbo that seemed to stretch on forever. But then, just as suddenly as it had disappeared, the light returned. It was soft at first, a gentle glow at the edge of his vision. Slowly, the light grew brighter, more tangible. The swirling darkness receded, revealing a familiar shape, Lyra. She was standing before him, bathed in a shimmering light, her features more defined than ever before. But something was wrong. Her eyes. They were different. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he saw the unnatural gleam in her gaze. The warmth and hope that had always been present in her expression were now replaced by something colder, harder. She was not the Lyra he knew. She was something else, something alien, something changed by the power of the heart. Alex. Her voice came softly, but it echoed in the vast emptiness around them. It felt both familiar and distant, as if coming from a far-off place. "Lyra," Alex whispered, his voice hoarse, his throat dry. What happened?" Lyra stepped closer, but her movements were stiff, robotic even. Her once graceful, fluid motions were now mechanical, as though she were being controlled by an invisible hand. Her face was unreadable, her lips barely moving as she spoke again. "It is over," she said, her voice distant, detached. "The heart has changed us. You can no longer return to the person you were." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. The weight of them was suffocating. "The heart has changed us." Those words replayed in his mind, each one carving into his consciousness, pushing away any hope of undoing what had been done. But you were supposed to save your people," Alex protested weakly. He struggled to push himself up, but his body was still unresponsive. His mind was clouded, his thoughts fragmented. "Lyra, we still have time. We can fix this. We can make it right." Lyra's expression softened for a brief moment, a flicker of the old warmth returning, but it vanished just as quickly. It is too late. You do not understand. The heart is not a savior, Alex. It is a parasite. It consumes everything, every memory, every emotion. It leaves behind only what it wants. The rest, it is discarded. Alex's heart raced as the weight of her words sank in. The heart is a parasite. She wasn't just talking about herself, or even about him. She was talking about everything. Their people, their history, their future. The heart didn't care about saving them. It cared only about its own existence. It didn't heal. It didn't restore. It took. What do you mean by discarded? Alex asked, his voice trembling. He wanted to understand, but everything inside him was telling him to get away, to escape this nightmare. But there was nowhere to run. The heart had already taken everything. Lyra looked away, her gaze distant, as though she were seeing something far beyond the void they stood in. It consumes what it needs, our memories, our personalities, our souls. But it leaves nothing in return except the power to control. It feeds on our essence and reshapes us into something different. I have already lost myself. And you, Alex, you are close to losing yourself too. Alex's chest tightened as he realized the truth. The heart hadn't just changed them physically. It had changed them on a deeper level, an irreversible level. It wasn't just a tool. It was a force of destruction. And now it had consumed what was left of Lyra's humanity. Then what happens to us? Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. He couldn't feel his own emotions anymore. All he could feel was the emptiness, the overwhelming weight of what they had unleashed. If we can't go back, what happens? Lyra finally turned to face him. And for a moment, her eyes softened with a mixture of pity and resignation. We are the heart now. Alex, the heart is not just an object. It is a living being, a consciousness that has existed for eons. And now, it is part of us. We are part of it. We cannot undo what has been done. All we can do is decide what we do with the power it has given us. Alex's heart dropped as he understood the full scope of her words. The heart wasn't just altering them. It was turning them into something else entirely. It was making them into agents of its will, slaves to its power. The chance of saving Lyra's people, of undoing what had happened, was slipping away with every passing second. I don't want to be part of this, Alex said, his voice filled with a quiet desperation. I can't. I didn't sign up for this. I don't care about power. I care about you, about saving your people. Lyra's expression darkened, her eyes becoming cold once again. You do not understand, Alex. The heart has already chosen. You have already crossed the line. There is no going back now. You are part of the heart, and the heart will not let you go. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. The silence that followed was deafening, and Alex could feel it crushing him, suffocating any hope he had left. But then something inside him shifted, a spark of defiance, a whisper of the man he had been before all of this. He wouldn't let it end like this. He couldn't. He had to fight. I will fight, he whispered to himself, though he wasn't sure if he was even speaking aloud. I won't let it take me. Lyra's gaze softened for just a moment, as if she understood what he was feeling. But it was fleeting. She knew, just as he did, that the heart's grip was not something that could easily be escaped. You may try, she said quietly, but remember, the heart always wins. In that moment, Alex knew that this wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a battle for their very souls. And the fate of both their species hung in the balance. The question now was who would win, the heart or them, and at what cost. The final choice. The silence that enveloped them felt like the end of everything. Alex stood frozen, his mind a storm of confusion, frustration, and fear. He could feel the weight of the heart's power pressing down on him, suffocating every trace of resistance he had left. And yet, in the depths of his soul, a small spark of defiance still flickered, fragile, but undeniable. He refused to let the heart take him. He refused to let Lyra become another casualty in this cosmic war of wills. Lyra, standing before him, was not the person he had once known. She was something else, changed, transformed, and yet still holding on to the remnants of the girl who had been a beacon of hope for an entire species. But now she was trapped in the same cycle of despair and manipulation that the heart had inflicted upon her people. "You don't have to do this," Alex said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We still have a choice. I don't care what the heart has turned us into. I won't let it win." Lyra's eyes flickered, just for a moment, as though something deep within her recognized the words. But then, the coldness returned. She crossed her arms, looking down at him with a mixture of pity and resignation. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The heart is not just power, Alex. It's a sentience. It knows us, knows our deepest fears, our greatest desires. It bends us to its will, and in doing so, it becomes a part of us. I'm no longer who I was. I've become something else, something the heart has shaped me into." "But you are still you," Alex countered, his heart pounding. "I know you, Lyra. You're in there. The heart might have changed you, but it hasn't erased you. You can still fight it. We both can." For a long moment, Lyra remained silent, her gaze fixed on the void around them. The stars flickered like distant memories, reminders of what had been, and what was slipping away with every passing second. "You don't know what it's like to be part of it," Lyra said, her voice soft, almost regretful. "The heart doesn't just take away our identity. It twists us, reshapes us, molds us into something we can't recognize. We lose ourselves piece by piece, until all that's left is the will of the heart. I can feel it, Alex. I can feel it pulling at me, tearing me apart. And no matter how much I want to fight, I can't escape." Alex's chest tightened as the gravity of her words sank in. He knew this wasn't just a physical battle. It was a battle of minds, of wills, of identities, and if they were to survive, they would have to fight not just the heart, but themselves. "But there's still a part of you left," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel it. I can see it in your eyes. The heart may have changed you, but it hasn't taken everything. It hasn't taken us. You've still got a choice, Lyra. You're not lost to me. You're not lost to this." Lyra's eyes softened, a tear slipping down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, but the gesture didn't go unnoticed. For just a heartbeat, Alex saw the truth, the humanity that was still buried deep within her. The heart could take her memories, her past, but it could never fully erase the core of who she was. "You're wrong," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm not the same person anymore. I don't even know who I am anymore. The heart has taken too much. It's too strong." "Then let me help you," Alex said, his heart racing. He stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "I'll be with you. We'll fight it together. I'm not leaving you. Not now. Not ever." Lyra hesitated. Her gaze flickered to the stars again, her mind torn between the remnants of her humanity and the overwhelming power of the heart. The battle was playing out in her eyes, an internal war that mirrored the one Alex was fighting in his own mind. "But how?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. "How do we fight something that has already claimed us?" Alex reached out, taking her hand in his. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world around them seemed to pause, holding its breath as they stood on the edge of a precipice, with nothing but the void beneath them. "We fight because we can," Alex said firmly. "Because even if the heart has changed us, it hasn't taken away our will to live. And as long as we still have that, we still have a chance." Lyra's hand tightened around his, a flicker of warmth returning to her touch. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face as though trying to find the man she had once known, the man she had once trusted. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she saw him. Not the person the heart had twisted her into, but the person she had been before. The person she still wanted to be. "I don't want to be a part of this anymore," Lyra whispered. "I don't want to be consumed. I want to be free." Alex's heart soared. "Then we're in this together. We'll find a way out, no matter what it takes." But as the words left his lips, the heart's presence began to pulse again, stronger than ever. The power that had enveloped them earlier was now surging, an oppressive force that pressed down on them, crushing all thoughts of escape. The heart was angry now, aware of the rebellion that had taken root in their minds. Lyra staggered, clutching her head as the pressure built within her. "It's trying to take control again," she gasped, her voice trembling. "I can feel it. It won't let go." Alex gritted his teeth, his own body rebelling against the pressure. But he didn't let go of Lyra's hand. He couldn't. Not now. "Then we resist," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We don't give in. We hold on." The stars above them began to swirl, and the void around them seemed to come alive with energy. Dark, oppressive, and all-consuming. But in that moment, Alex made a choice. He would fight, no matter the cost. And he would help Lyra do the same. The heart might have taken everything else from them, but it would never take their will to survive. And together, they would stand, facing the most powerful force in the universe, united against the darkness, even if it meant they would have to burn in the process.